Live for this live presentation, which is a 1 hour webinar. It's a financial seminar that's being brought to you courtesy of DFLI, the Money School. And this is a 60-minute webinar for those of you who are like me. You're in a relationship. You are either very, very serious about someone or thinking about perhaps tying the knot, or maybe you're already married. We want to talk today about couples issues. We call this webinar Yours, Mine, and Ours, and it is a financial webinar for couples. And I want to say a big thank you to the Money School, to DFLI, because they have so graciously agreed to sponsor this session. Now, just a little bit about me, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm the money coach, Lynnette Khalfani-Cox. I'll be your presenter today, and you might know me from one of my books. It's a New York Times bestseller called Zero Debt, The Ultimate Guide to Financial Freedom. And some of you probably even know me through the Money School because you've been to some of the events that DFLI has sponsored. Maybe you came to some of the sessions we've had in Wilmington, and you came out and met me personally. So I'm honored that you decided to join me today. This is really me, live and in real time. Some people were saying, well, is this going to be live or not? Yes, it really is me. As you can see, I'm here. There's no shenanigans going on. This is not recorded. I am going to also give you the chance at the end of this session to ask me some questions. We want to make sure that those of you who have some money questions, that you can ask those questions. If you look on your screen with the interact button that's up there, you can share your mood with others. If you click on that, you'll see there's a thing where it has a hand that goes up, and you can raise your hand if you have questions, and go ahead and feel free to chime in and ask one of those questions. I'm going to let you build up with those questions, and we'll take the questions at the end of the session. So I'm going to go through the presentation, and I want to make sure that I give all of the information that we were planning to do for today's session. But do know that you can, in fact, have questions, and we'll go ahead and get them answered for you right live tonight. Okay. Some of you want to follow me on social media. You can find me on Twitter at The Money Coach. Of course, I'm on Facebook. I'm on, LinkedIn, YouTube, all that good stuff. Find me, catch me on social media, and I'll take some of your questions there as well. Okay. So what are we going to be talking about today? Well, I want you to know that there are 3 really big objectives. You might find that you learned 5 or 6 or 7 actual lessons in all. Maybe you got 10 tips out of tonight's session, but big picture, overall, I want you to understand that we have 3 primary objectives to this workshop. First, I want you to understand the most common money issues that couples face. And sometimes you might be feeling like, are we the only ones going through this? Or you might think that your specific situation is unique to you. And indeed, every last one of us is unique. That could be the case. But I want you to know that there are some common issues, some common mistakes, even some common problems that many couples, if I dare not say most couples, face. Then I want to teach you a 3-step strategy for overcoming those problems to achieving greater financial harmony in your relationship. Because I do think deep down that that's what all of us want, right? I mean, you don't just want to be in a very serious, committed relationship. You don't want to be in a marriage and feel like you are, trudging along and you're fighting at every turn and you're having a lot of money squabbles or other problems, and that's impacting your ability to kind of get on the same page financially. And that's why the 3rd objective for today's session is to talk to you about some of the ways, some of the non-financial ways that you can promote financial harmony in your relationship. And so many times I think people think that the solution to some of the money problems they're facing, that they're always money problems or money answers as the solution. And believe it or not, that's not always the case. And I'm going to show you exactly why that is as I walk you through today's session. So First, what are some of those common problems? What are some of those mistakes that, frankly, some people make and that I want you to avoid? Well, first up is trying to change the other person. Okay. Now, we know, of course, that some of us do this in our personal lives. Maybe you want your mate to be a little more romantic. Maybe you want them to be more talkative. Maybe you want them to be more fiscally responsible. I don't know. I'm thinking that some of you do want that. That's probably why you're at this session. But at the heart of it is every single one of us has our own personality. And likewise, we all have our own money personality. And so, one of the big mistakes that many people make in a relationship is trying to change the other person's money personality. You know, there's 6 different money personalities. There's a saver, there's a splurger, there's a spender, there's a hoarder, there's a planner, and so forth and so on. If you reach out to me on askthemoneycoach.com, I want you to feel free to say, Lynnette, tell me about those money personalities that you mentioned so I can find out which one I am. I actually have a very quick quiz so that you can take for yourself, give it to your spouse or partner, and then find out what type of money personality that each one of you is. It's very helpful for a lot of couples. But I don't want to go too deep into that tonight. I just want to focus on the fact that if you are constantly trying to change your partner's money personality, that's usually a dead end road. It's usually a non-starter, not very effective for a whole host of reasons. Okay. So that's one of the mistakes that I actually want you to try to avoid. And think about it in these terms. Just like you're not going to change the fundamental core of somebody's personality. If you're thinking, oh, he's so shy, I'd like him to be more outgoing. Or if you're thinking, she's such a talker, I want her to take it down a notch and maybe, shut up a little bit, she's probably not going to change. People at their core, they can change and grow, definitely. They can mature, and you're going to hear me talk about that later today. But the fundamental core of who people are, temperament and personality wise, part of the reason it doesn't change very much is that our personalities are rooted in childhood and how we grew up and what we learned from our parents and others that were around us as children, as teens, as young adults, and so forth. So don't make the mistake of trying to change your mate's money personality. Another mistake is trying to have joint accounts too soon. Now, I promise you that we were going to talk about joint accounts today, and indeed we are. But I want you to know that for many, many people who get into a relationship, I think they get financially enmeshed way too quickly. So what do I mean by too soon? If you're already married, no, I'm not going to say that that's necessarily too soon, although it could be. Some people, even married people, are not yet ready to combine their financial accounts. Again, I'll talk to you about why that is, some of the problems, the pros and cons even of having joint and separate accounts. But suffice it to say for now, I don't want you to make the mistake, if you're not yet ready, of joining your financial accounts prematurely. A third mistake that people make, and a cause for a lot of problems, especially money problems in a relationship, is what I call financial infidelity, financial secrets. Because anytime you have secrets of any kind in a relationship, money or otherwise, you're running the risk of having your mate not trust you and not want to believe some of the things that you're saying. So you really don't want to have financial secrets in a relationship. It's harmful and it undermines your relationship in many ways, not just financially. The fourth way in which a lot of people ruin their personal and financial relationships with the people they love and care about most is by avoiding money issues, sweeping them under the rug, and basically refusing to have the money talk or the series of money talks that are necessary in order to help you to propel forward as a couple. Now, sometimes, some people say, listen, I don't want to talk about money issues because frankly, um, I'm doing me, he's doing him, or she's doing her, We don't need to cross over too much and have too much, you know, conversation about what I do with my money. Does that sound familiar? I've heard some people say this, they say, you know what? I pay the cost to be the boss, that kind of thing, or what's mine is mine. And frankly, what's yours is mine too, that kind of thing. Well, if you're going to be in a marriage, which is about partnership and about unity and about cohesiveness and togetherness, you really do want to promote shared values at some level. I'm not saying that everything has to be tight together like this and you have to be joined literally at the hip every step of the way, financially or otherwise. But I am saying that avoiding talking about money because you'd rather sweep things under the rug, or it's not comfortable, or it seems unromantic, or maybe you're close in the relationship but not yet married, and you're like, I don't want to seem like a gold digger, or I don't want to pry too much. Well, honey, if you're going to get married to somebody and you guys are talking about being wed, or you're already married, there's not much you shouldn't be able to talk about, okay? If anything. So I encourage you to not make that mistake. And finally, some people make the mistake of investing too much in stuff and not enough in the relationship itself. And what I mean by that is they'll talk about their shared goals. They will have money conversations. It's about, should we buy this house? Should we get this car? Should we invest in this or that thing? Stock market, education, paying for our kids' stuff, whatever. And they're spending so much time on the spending, investing, quote unquote, wealth building, even side of things, that they're not investing in the quality of the relationship, which is really and truly built up by nurtured conversations. At the end of the day, the art of communication is what is going to help you have a healthier, more financially successful, more stable marriage, and a more long-lasting union, one that's happy for both parties. Okay? So let's talk about how you avoid those mistakes, how you combat some of the problems that emerge when you have those 5 issues, or even better yet, how you can prevent them in the first place. I like to tell couples to use a strategy, a 3-step strategy that I call disclose, discuss, decide. Disclose, discuss, decide. It's a powerful way for couples at every phase of life to be able to better connect with each other and especially get on the same page financially. Now, this is what you want, right? As I said in the outset, you do want to be on the right side of things with your spouse or your mate, don't you? What does the right side mean? Does it mean that you're in the right all the time? No, that's not what it means. It means that you're moving in harmony together. Picture that you're both in a rowboat together and that you're both having a set of oars and that you're pulling in the same direction. You're not going in opposite directions, which would tend to make you not get anywhere, right? So if you use this 3-step strategy that I'm going to outline for you right now, trust me that you'll be able to have so much more financial harmony in your relationship, and you'll be happier and, dare I say, more financially strong together as well. So what does it mean to disclose? Well, in the basic level, you should know each other's income. You should know about your assets. You should know each other's credit history and credit rating. Yeah, I'm talking about you should know each other's credit scores. And to do that, you have to first know your own credit score, right? And I know that a lot of you haven't. Some of you haven't peaked. You're like, I don't want to know. But you really should be checking that out. And you should even know about things like debts that are owed. And I mean everything. The credit card bills. Are there student loans that each party knows about? Are there personal loans, family loans, other obligations? Are you sending money back home? You heard me. Some of you sending money back home. I think that if you're doing that, you should let your mate know about it and not try to keep it hidden. It's really super important to disclose the truth about your finances with your mate, because that's one of the very first steps to achieving financial harmony, even though for a lot of people, it might be a very tough first step. Now, why is disclosure so important? Some of you might be saying, as I mentioned earlier, this is my business. This is my personal information. And why do I need to spill my guts, so to speak? Not only because you want to establish trust, right? But because those secrets, those hidden secrets, tend to be the things that come back to bite you on the butt. If your mate finds out about something that you've not disclosed, think about it. Let's talk non-financial terms. Have you ever been busted in something? Has your mate ever just found out about something, even if you didn't quote unquote get busted? But when they found out and they said, why didn't you tell me this? What was your answer? Some of you probably said, I didn't tell you because I knew how you would respond. I knew you were going to act just like this. That was your game, huh? That was your game face. That's what you told them. Well, trust me when I say that if you disclose information up front, your mate will be far more likely to be able to hear it out, even if it's something that they frankly don't like to hear, that they would have rather not having heard, etc. They'll be able to absorb it, to accept it, to communicate with you and to listen, as opposed to feeling like they had to catch you in some way and that you got quote unquote busted. A lot of people say that a lack of financial disclosure, financial secrets, financial infidelity, dishonesty, depending on what you want to call it, is even more harmful, is just as bad as cheating, having a sexual affair. In fact, one study showed that 60% of people who were surveyed, both men and women, said that financial dishonesty was just as bad as cheating. So again, you don't want to be in the unfortunate position of not having disclosed something to your partner and then he or she having to find out about it on her own or his own, and in some way that erodes trust. Okay? Better to be upfront about it than to have some kind of information divulged in a way that you would have not preferred. Next step in the 3-step strategy is about discussing. It's super important, again, as I mentioned, that we not sweep things under the rug, that we address issues and talk about them head on. You have to talk about why certain things happened in your past. You know, if you're disclosing the fact that, you know what, I have these credit card debts over here that I didn't tell you about. I have this student loans over here that I forgot to mention. Or yes, actually my father, my mother-in-law, my whoever is paying for this for me, whatever it might be. You might want to talk to your mate about how things got there, where it all started and how you got to whatever it is, positive or negative. That's very instructive because it's going to help your mate to better understand you and to in many ways, appreciate some of the things that you've had to go through or some of the things that you've had to overcome. So I tell people that you should talk about both your successes and your failures, your past upbringing and the way that it influenced you. Remember before that I said, you know, all of us have our own money personalities, and a lot of it is rooted in childhood and our upbringing. And I'm seeing from some of the questions and some of the comments that were coming in here already. And again, I'm going to get to you guys. Some of you have said, I'm a spender. Somebody confessed straight up, I'm a spender. You know, I understand, believe it or not, between the two of us, with my husband and I'm going to share with you today some personal stories about my own family life, my own relationship with my husband and how we make it work. Between the two of us, my husband says I'm the spender and he's the saver. Really, as I mentioned to you, there are 6 different money personality types. I define myself more as a planner, and he does too, because he knows I'm constantly trying to say, okay, but what about 10 years from now? What about 20 years? What about, you know, when our daughter, our 10-year-old daughter, Alexis, is off to college? And he considers me the planner of the family too. But I'm telling you that because sometimes people say, I'm a spender, he's a saver, or vice versa. And we're going to talk about, can you make it work? Okay. But when you're dealing with the issue of discuss, feel free to go ahead and talk about how it all began, because that's actually going to be part of the foundation for building trust in your relationship. I see someone said, I think I invest more in stuff. No, I'm sorry. They said, I think I invest in more than stuff than my marriage. I hear you on that. And I'm glad to see that some of you are weighing in with the comments. It makes me glad to know you guys are listening and paying attention and moving along here. Another quick note, throughout this presentation, you can see me live here and you see the screen that I've set up to for you to follow along with my slides. I may go in and out and just literally take off the slides and then go back to just to me on screen here, just if I want to emphasize something, or I may just do it at the end Q&A, but I want you to just track along with me here. And again, feel free to make sure that if you have those questions, you're going to be able to get them answered at the end. Okay. Now, can I give you guys some guidance about discussing things with your mate and how to build financial harmony in this way? Timing matters. Okay. Now, some of you want to just talk, and yeah, some of you women, you want to talk like right before the game is coming on. Can I just be real? And if your guy is into sports, and I happen to be the one into sports in my family. I think I'm more into sports than into football. But I'm sort of making a joke here to say that your timing does matter, because don't raise some big, heavy, deep issue right before something, whatever, that's important to your mate is going on or is about to happen. Don't do it when they're tired. Don't do it when they're hungry. Don't do it when they've had a hard day, a bad day at work, etc. Carve out some time when it's nice and peaceful. Don't do it in the middle of an argument. Don't say, this is why we can never get anything done because of you. Don't do it in an accusatory way. As a matter of fact, I'd like for you to do it in a judgment-free way, in a manner that's really loaded with as much compassion as you can muster. Now, some of you are going to see here what I have on the screen, and I've quoted 2 Bible verses. The first is from Colossians 3:19, where it admonishes husbands. It says, love your wives and do not be harsh with them. And then in Ephesians 4:32, it says, be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another as God in Christ forgave you. Now, I happen to be a Christian, but I don't impose my religious beliefs on anybody. And certainly, if you're not a person of faith, take this in the spirit in which it was intended, which is really talking about compassion. I happen to use 2 Bible verses that I thought were really warm and evocative of this notion of compassion. But I'm telling you that compassion can be a very, very super powerful non-financial tool that you use to get financial harmony in your relationship. And again, I'm going to share some things that my husband and I have done with one another and speaking to each other and doing things for each other, sacrificing for each other, learning from one another, and showing one another compassion in a way that had financial ties and not financial ties, but that strengthened us in our marriage and in our finances. Okay. So when you get to the point that you are discussing something with your spouse or your mate, can I give you another pointer about suggested first topics? I told you already that you don't want to go so heavy and so deep, when they're in the middle of something. You don't want to have the problem of bad timing, but neither do you want to address when you're really ready to dig deep into your relationship. Neither do you want to address sort of the wrong issues at the wrong time. And what do I mean by the wrong issues? I mean, starting in the wrong order. So if you really want to get going toward the end of your story together, the story is the epic romance. The story is the happily ever after. The story is the happy marriage that is till death do you part, a lifetime together without financial disharmony, without divorce, right? How do you get to the end of the story? You start at the beginning. You don't just start in the middle, right? You don't start 3/4 of the way in. You got to start at the beginning. So my question for you is, Can you take some of these suggested questions and use them in conversation with your spouse? Ask them first about the beginning. Ask your husband, ask your wife about their own financial and personal upbringing. I promise you, you will learn a world of things about your spouse. Some of you need to ask your mate something like this: what's your first recollection about money? When's the very first time you remember even being conscious about money, thinking about money, asking about money? How was money handled in your household? Who was in control of the money? You know, some people had very traditional upbringings. Maybe the father was the controller of the money. Maybe the father was the person who earned all the money. Maybe that wasn't the case. In any event, whatever your spouse or your significant other tells you, I can guarantee you're going to learn something revealing, probably because they're going to unearth some things. They're going to think back and reflect and say, wow, you know what? I guess my first memory of money is when I was about 5 years old. You know, for me, one of my earliest memories, believe it or not, was about growing up in Los Angeles. My husband always jokes with me and says, you know, you're from Compton. And I'm like, honey, I'm not from Compton. Although for a very, very brief time, my family did live in Compton. For the most part, I grew up in the south part of Los Angeles. No, not always South Central. We won't go there. However, my point is, at one point we lived in Compton, and I had to have been maybe 3 or 4 years old. I remember the apartment in which we lived, and I've shared this story with my husband. I remember that my entire life, until I got married first time around and bought a house when I was about 25 years old, I lived in apartments my entire life. Okay. I remember living above a store, a grocery store. This was in Compton. And I remember a man named Mr. Champion, who was the owner of the store, who, you know, had all these tasty treats and pastries and, you know, and I remember when friends of my mother or when people would buy us things and buy us treats, little things. And I was like, oh, okay, the money helps to bring the treats. And in my mind, it was kind of like, money equated with a treat, you know? So again, sharing some of those stories, it made me reflect and have to think back. So what happened in your mate's own family life? Did their parents have arguments about money all the time or not? Again, I remember being 5, 6, 7 years old and constantly hearing my parents argue about money. And yes, that did impact me. It informed some of the things that I thought were important or not important about money, etc. Go deep with your mate or your spouse and ask them these questions. You'll probably be surprised at some of the answers. Okay. It's also going to help you to develop that magic C word that I talked about, compassion. All right. The third step I want to talk to you about is the idea of deciding together. Remember I said disclose, discuss, decide. You have to ultimately decide after you talk about a whole host of issues. Again, starting from the beginning, starting with the issues that were rooted in childhood and their upbringing and how their parents or their family members handled finances, onto what they did as a teenager, as a young adult, maybe in a previous marriage or in their adult life. All of that matters. It's all part of the baggage, frankly, that we bring to the table as married people. So ultimately, if you guys have committed to one another and committed to the relationship, you're going to have to decide, if you want financial harmony, how do we move forward together? And what kind of financial independence does each one of us desire? Some of you say, I don't want any financial independence. Some of you are like, everything should be 50-50. Everything should be joint. We should, if we're going to be married, it should be all in, sort of all or nothing. Honestly, I question whether there's the need or on both parties, perhaps a desire for that, or even whether it's prudent. And I'm going to share with you why that is. It doesn't matter though. My opinion about how it should be in your relationship certainly doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, as long as the two of you agree on a path forward, as long as the two of you say, these are the goals that are a priority for us, and this is what we want to pursue, and this is how we want to pursue it, then that's how you come to the right decisions together. Okay? Now, when you're deciding, I told you you're going to have to come to some decisions about priorities and some goals. A lot of couples get hung up on the how and the when, not necessarily the what. A lot of times people say, we know what we need to do. We know we need to pay off our debts. We got credit card debt. We know we need to knock down our mortgage, or maybe we need to buy a house. We know we need to save more, or maybe we need to save for retirement, or maybe we need to save for our kids' college education. We know we need to invest. Maybe we need to plan better for our retirement. All of these are very good and laudable goals. But sometimes what happens and what the hangup is for a lot of couples is that they get tied up in the how. Like, how should we pay off our debts, right? Or how should we pay for this new home that we want? Or what comes first? So when are we going to start saving for retirement? Or when are we going to start saving for the kids' college education? That's when it becomes tricky, is in deciding together the priorities. And again, only the two of you can do that together, but there are some ways, again, that you can do it and make it work by at the very, very least, making sure that you both agree on what the goal is. And then you say, should we look at the short term? Should we look at the medium range? And should we look at the long-term goals? Just breaking your goals up into segmented areas. Short term, meaning 1 year or less, we want this to be accomplished. Medium range, meaning 1 year to either 3 years or 5 years, again, depending on your age and your time horizon. The medium range goals would fit into that 1 to 3 years, or even 1 to 5 year time horizon. Or long term might be anything from 5 to 20 years plus, or well beyond 20 years, the long-term goals. So what some couples effectively do is to not only prioritize and talk through what's most important for us, but to look at it and say, strategically, we don't want to neglect any one area. We don't want to always be thinking short term at the risk of not planning at all and not thinking about our medium or our long range goals. So maybe we should prioritize by picking maybe one out of each one of those categories, one of the goals to address first and to work on that. Just a tip, just an idea to think about how to prioritize when you're thinking about that question of what comes first and when. Now, at the very core for a lot of couples, and I see some of your questions that have been raised here in the question box on my side here. Some of you have already asked about the joint accounts thing and about what is preferable and what's advisable. I told you I'm going to tell you my advice on this tonight. And indeed, I definitely believe that there are both pros and cons to having separate accounts, as well as pros and cons, or advantages and disadvantages to having joint accounts as well. So let's talk through the pros, the advantages of having separate accounts. First, frankly, each of you has a certain degree of financial independence and autonomy. That can actually be a good thing. Now, I see somebody just said, second marriage. Hey, you're like me. Somebody just said, second marriage, we have separate accounts but share expenses. I like that. So listen, the thing about separate accounts and having financial independence, I'm going to be honest with you. Most couples that I know who put this into practice, not even just that I know, couples, and there's been studies on this, and couples who I've coached who not just like personal friends of mine, but couples who said, let's see if this will work for us, or what the downside to this might be. To me, I've highlighted the 4 main things that are good qualities or positive attributes of having separate accounts. The financial independence question is, I think, a very important one and a strong reason for having separate accounts. What do I mean by financial independence? It's not the right to just say, I do whatever I please. However, it may be a slight variation on that theme. It may be something more akin to you saying, this money over here in my separate account, I don't have to ask for permission to spend it. I don't have to get buy-in or approval. I don't have to make sure that I first get my partner's blessing, because this money is my discretionary money that I get to choose to do whatever I want to do with it. And at the end of the day, there's only 4 things that you can do with money. You can save it, you can spend it, you can invest it, or you can donate it. Now, for the most part, when couples are arguing about money, it's usually about how it's being spent, or maybe about the fact that there's not enough money to go around. But suffice to say, having separate accounts and maintaining some money in your own account, in your own name, again, that you don't, quote unquote, have to ask permission to spend, can be a way to have financial independence and fewer arguments about those things, like, why did you spend on this or that? You don't have to really deal with that, because frankly, you spent on it because you wanted to. It's pretty much that simple. Having separate accounts also promotes good financial skills, because you have to learn how to balance a checkbook on your own. You have to learn how to have some perhaps credit accounts on your own, pay the bills on time, pay down the debts. So you're developing a level of financial literacy and skill building that I think is actually important for people to learn, women and men. And especially though for women, because a lot of women get into the situation where they had only joint accounts, or perhaps they were the authorized user on a mate's credit accounts, and they didn't have any credit history on their own. And that actually hurts them in the event the spouse dies, in the event of a divorce or a breakup, that kind of thing. So for these reasons, I think that these 4 positive attributes of having separate accounts should not be ignored. Now, some of you, I see from some of the questions over here, you're asking about the pitfalls. So let's talk about a little bit of the cons of having separate accounts, and we should go through these. One is the potential for violations of trust, and I think this is a serious one. Now, we already alluded to the fact that some people have financial secrets, right? That some people engage in what I call financial infidelity or dishonesty, and you don't want to undermine the trust in your relationship by having secrets of any kind, really. But what do I mean by violations of trust? It's not just, oh, I went off and I spent money that I shouldn't, or I did something that you didn't know about. It goes far beyond that. Some people have used separate accounts to have affairs. Yeah, I said it. Affairs. They have a whole bunch of stuff going on well beyond, oh, I bought an electronics or a gadget, or I bought a new dress, I bought some shoes I didn't tell them about. They go way beyond that, and they have a whole set of other issues going on. And that's the real reason that they want to have separate accounts. Now, again, you're going to see later in this presentation, I'm going to question why some of you want to have separate accounts. Again, if you're doing it on the up and up and for the positive sort of reasons that I outlined before, I don't have a problem with you having separate accounts. But do know that power and control issues can emerge as well, especially if you have a couple in a relationship where there is a disparity in income, or perhaps one is the main breadwinner or the sole breadwinner. Those issues can come up. If somebody says, well, yeah, you get to have this money in this account, or you get to have a separate account and yours is flush, but mine isn't so fat. So how is that fair? So those issues can emerge. That's a drawback. And then if you're not on the same page and you're sort of going at a pace at which you're getting further and further disconnected, having separate accounts can be a yet another avenue for you to go down that leads you towards disharmony, that leads towards separation. And I don't mean necessarily marital separation. I just mean like a lack of unity and cohesion. And so for some people, they found that separate accounts, we were so separate, it just kind of made us be separate in other areas, and that they preferred a little more intimacy, a little more conversation, a little more communication, a little more talking through things, and that the joint accounts actually provided for that. So let's talk about some of those pros of the joint accounts. Well, you really should have pretty much 100% financial transparency, or at least each person should have access to the information in each account. So you don't have too many questions about what was spent, where'd the money go, those kind of things. It still happens. Trust me. I've talked to so many couples where somebody's like, I don't know what they did with the money. They secretly took out or did this or said they were going to do that. And so it's not like joint accounts totally solves that problem, especially if somebody just happens to be trying to be slick and trying to do something that's shady or underhanded or secretive. By very definition, a person who's lying, scheming, doing something that's, immoral or untoward, they are taking pains and steps to try to hide their behavior. So just having joint accounts is not going to solve that issue. You need more help than that, okay? But in general, if you do have joint accounts, you're often going to have a lot more communication about your own money issues. For example, my husband and I have, in our relationship, joint accounts, separate accounts as well. And we also have on our joint accounts things that are electronic triggers for both of us. So we'll get emails, we'll get text alerts. If a deposit is made at our account, if withdrawals are made at a certain level, if a card gets a charge on it, we'll both get an email or an alert about it. So we both know if he's out at the store and he's spending on something, if I'm out at the store and I'm spending on something, we both know. And that actually promotes financial harmony for us and actually communication and us to both be on the same page and to know how our money is being handled, how our spending for both of us is being handled. We like to focus on team goals and having shared objectives, and the joint account aspect actually helps us to do just that. Now, the cons or the drawbacks of having joint accounts, I can really just think of two. Feel free if you think there's more. You can tell me if you think so. But one is the potential risk for more money squabbles. As I mentioned before, that people who have separate accounts generally have fewer money squabbles. And part of it is because they don't have to, quote unquote, ask for permission or kind of get buy-in, etc. And they can generally spend at least a certain amount of their money in the way that they choose or that they see fit. Okay. Another, though, risk of joint accounts is going in all in a little too soon. As I mentioned, some people do it before they're married, while they're living together, or before they're engaged, or before they've established a really strong bond of trust and an understanding of where the relationship is going. Unmarried, especially. I think it's too soon if you're not a committed couple who has a set of shared goals that you've really talked through and that you've decided that you want to work together in achieving. Okay? So let's move forward a little bit here. For those of you who are so inclined, maybe you do like I did and like I found tons of couples do. Over 50% of all couples have some kind of a separate account, believe it or not. I call it the happy medium solution. It's do both, It's have your separate account and have a joint account as well. And you know what this does? In a lot of ways, it helps a lot of couples to diminish arguments and squabbles about money because you have an opportunity to have in a separate account, say, your own spending money. And what some couples actually do, and quite effectively, I might add, is they'll set a limit. So they'll have a conversation. Remember, they'll go through the disclosure, they'll discuss, and they'll decide together what's a reasonable amount of spending that, either one of us can or should be able to do. And that, frankly, the other party would not get upset about it. I've known people to go out and buy cars. Yeah, okay, I'm talking, big 5-figure cars and not tell the spouse about it until they got home and just rolled up like, yes, I just bought this car. Believe it or not, I know someone who bought a house and just was, you might think, oh, were they newlyweds? And was one party like, surprise? No, it wasn't exactly that way. It was like the person said, oh, yeah, this is where we'll be living and bought a house. Okay. And then the spouse was like, okay, it actually worked out. They've been married a long time, and it was fine. But for some people, the preferred strategy is to do something that's more akin to establishing some guidelines and some ground rules ahead of time. So some people will say things like, okay, if it's something, $500 or less, $200 or less, $1,000 or less, the number itself doesn't matter, because again, that's up to you and your mate to decide upon, right? But the idea that some couples do when they have separate accounts and joint accounts as well is they'll say, anything under this amount of money, feel free to spend it out of your separate account. Some might even say out of their joint account, and no questions asked. But certainly on the separate account side, you can spend either your own money as you choose, or have a certain amount that you spend and that you really don't have to be questioned about. That actually works for a lot of couples. They often use the joint account for the household bills, for the rent or the mortgage, for the utilities, to buy the groceries, to pay for the kids' school stuff, or to buy the kids' clothes. That's where the joint account would come in. And again, it's important to be on the same page, because if you have a joint account, you both don't want to be spending recklessly, certainly, and have an account that's overdrawn, max out your credit cards, tap into savings that were meant to be earmarked for other goals, etc. So short and to the point idea that I'm trying to convey here is that it's actually often very helpful to do both, to try that happy medium solution where you have both a joint account and your own separate account to promote your financial autonomy. Okay. Now, you heard me say earlier that I was, going to question some of you who might want that separate account about why you want to have that separate account. I'm just asking you because that's what your honey is thinking about. Yeah, he or she is saying, are you doing some secret spending? Is it something that I should know about? Is some charges you're making that I should, be privy to here? I wonder. I'm asking again because I'm telling you, that's what's in the mind of your spouse, right or wrong, legit or not. Okay. When you start talking about separation or independence, some people get fearful. Some people get worried, and the fears may be totally unfounded. You may say, honey, look, it's not even that serious. I'm not, trust me, there's no hidden agenda here. Again, that's the reason more than ever to sit down and have a serious conversation, one that's open and honest and filled with compassion as well. Okay. Because that's kind of the understanding side about what your mate might be feeling and what they might be fearing as well. Now, some of you might be saying, what he don't know won't hurt him. You might say, this is my money, this is my credit card, or this is, my cash, this is my income. Well, I'm going to question and challenge you on that whole, if he doesn't know, what he doesn't know won't hurt him thing. Because how would you like it if he was out there doing something? I won't say what, just use your imagination. And his mantra was, what she doesn't know won't hurt her. It doesn't feel so good, does it? You wouldn't like that, would you? No, nobody likes to feel like the wool has been pulled over their eyes. Nobody likes to feel like their partner is stepping out on them in any way, shape, or fashion. If you're going to have honesty, if you're going to have trust, if you're going to have fidelity of all kinds, financial fidelity, personal fidelity, and otherwise, it works both ways. What's good for the goose truly is good for the gander. Okay. Now, some of you, if you're thinking through some of the issues that I've raised today, whether it's about shared accounts, separate accounts, whether it's about goals, what should come first, etc., I want you to think about the way in which power and control issues can emerge in a relationship. This is where it gets really thorny, guys. I'm going to be honest with you. It gets tricky, especially for couples who say we have to balance things that our parents didn't have to balance or our grandparents didn't have to face. For example, what if the woman out earns the man? How do you deal with that? What if one party says, you know what, you just do it all, just handle it. I don't want to be involved in the money thing. You're good at that. What if that person is actually wanting to abdicate financial control and responsibility, but you're like, no, 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 honey, I want you to learn. I want you to understand. I want to bring you into the conversation. I want you to be part of this. And what if they don't want to have any part of it? What do you do then? I tell people all the time that you have to watch out for issues of power and control in a relationship and how they can get manifested in financial terms and in non-financial ways, because it can be empowering. It can be healthy for a relationship if you are open and honest enough to talk about those issues that creep up, or it can be harmful if one person feels like, I am being subjected to this person's whims. And because they out-earn me, because they're the opposite gender, maybe because they're the man in the relationship, they feel like their word always goes and is law, because of their upbringing, whatever. And that can cause resentment. That's one of the things you don't want to let build up in your relationship. Divorce counselors, psychologists talk about a whole host of things that a marriage can survive. And believe it or not, infidelity, personal, physical, sexual infidelity is one that psychologists say couples can survive. But one of the things that they say couples can't survive is resentment in a relationship. And people can get awfully resentful when they feel taken advantage of, when they feel powerless, when they feel like they have absolutely no control in a relationship. So I want to encourage those of you who may have partners who feel like you've kind of got the vice grip on the wallet, or you've got the extreme amount of control in the relationship. I want to encourage you to think about ways in which you can incorporate more inclusiveness in your relationship. Bring the other person into the fold. And again, part of it is the art of communication. Part of it is in being willing to be raw and honest and mature enough to recognize your partner is just like you. He or she has their own strengths and weaknesses, their own flaws, their own phobias, their own fears, their own worries about a whole host of issues, many of which, in all honesty, may have nothing at all to do with you or the quality or the state of your relationship. But nevertheless, that doesn't mean that your relationship won't be impacted by the other person's feelings, thoughts, behaviors. So it's important for you to be mindful of all of those issues, okay? Now, I've used the word compassion a couple of times today, and I want to highlight one or two things for you guys in my own relationship, because I told you that I would share some of the things that my husband Earl and I do in order to keep each other on a even keel, to maintain financial harmony, and to make sure that our marriage is always moving in a positive direction. So one of the things that Earl and I do for one another is to try to watch out for each other when we are overworked, because both of us work really hard. Those of you who know us know that we are co-owners of a financial education business, themoneycoach.net. That's our LLC. We also operate our free financial advice blog together called askthemoneycoach.com. And today, for example, was a case in point. Some of you saw me today on Good Morning America. And in fact, I'm going to be on there again tomorrow, bright and early. I'll be there at 5:30 a.m. for a call time of 5:30 a.m. And you'll see me on there at about 8:30 in the morning when we go live. But part of what happened today, and part of the reason I was able to do all of that and be in New York and hustle and do my webinar tonight, is that my husband plays such a critical role in making sure that the business end and the family end of our marriage and relationship and our life together always operates smoothly. And so I remember a couple years ago when Earl was, it was his birthday. And we travel a lot. And I told him, oh, you know what, honey, here, I'm going to book this cruise. It was a cruise to the Caribbean that I thought we should go on. And my husband emailed me back. Yes, he emailed me. He sent me an email. I had shot him an email, said, look at this cruise, want to go, kind of thing. And he shot me an email back and he said, honey, honestly, I don't need to go on another cruise. He said, and this was frankly after many Caribbean cruises. He said, I'm okay right now. Really don't feel the need to travel. He said, however, I think you might be tired. I think you might be a bit burnt out. And I think that you might be, feeling overworked. And if you want to go on the cruise, in other words, he was in a very, very nice way saying to me, this ain't for me. This ain't for my birthday. Girl, you want to go on that cruise. But he had compassion for me. And he said, you know what, honey, if you want to go on the cruise, just tell me you want to go on the cruise and it's done. We'll go off together and we'll have a great time. And I was like, yeah, honestly, I feel like I need a break. And so we went on a cruise for his birthday. But now my husband could have called me on it. He could have said, now, Lynnette, you really just, okay, is this your little trick you're trying to do, what's something you're trying to do? But he had compassion for me being an overworked person at that time. And he understood his wife and knew his wife well. And we still made it work for us. Okay. So I just wanted to highlight that one thing that came to mind to tell you, some of you who feel like, I'm a saver, he's a spender, or he's a spender, I'm a saver, or vice versa, whichever way it goes. You're asking this question, and I see from a lot of the questions here too, about can it work? And I told you already, yes, actually it can. My husband feels like I'm the spender in the family again, and that he's the saver, and he loves to save $1. Don't get me wrong. He loves to save $1. However, yes, as long as you're able to both work together and you're committed and willing to do it, to stay on the same page, especially using some of the tips and the tricks that I taught you tonight, it is worth it. And it is possible for even financial opposites to have financial harmony. Can I share with you one other thing before I close and start taking some of your questions? We're about 2 minutes out from our end of our 1 hour session. This is a strategy that Earl and I use because as we've grown in our relationship together, as we've grown as individuals, and as we've grown as business partners and as a couple, we recognize that mature people understand that they will change over time and that their partners will change over time. So one of the things that we've done very successfully in our relationship is to use 6 little words. The words are, today, this is how I feel. I cannot tell you how helpful this has been in our marriage, how helpful financially, personally, and otherwise. What it does is it gives each of us license to change our minds. It lets the other party know that, you know what, we might be on a seesaw. I know that I've always said, you know what, I just want to save. I want to cut money and spending back. I don't want to do anything. But today, this is how I feel. Today, I do feel like going on a cruise. I do feel like doing something different. And it's a way for us to know that what my partner is telling me isn't written in stone. They may change their opinion or their mind about this tomorrow. We are all human beings who grow, mature, and change. And at the end of the day, I'm not going to throw something back in their face. I'm not going to say to him or her, but you just said that you wanted this, And here is a perfect example, a case in point of wanting this and a today, this is how I feel kind of thing. I told you guys that my husband and I both love to travel, and we're at 8 o'clock hour. So I'm going to end it with this, and then I'm going to go right to the questions. So for those of you who, may or may not know, I happen to be 40 something years old. Okay. I'm not going to tell you exactly, but suffice to say, on my 40th birthday, my husband, Earl, he told me that he wanted to take me to Bora Bora. Yes, Bora Bora. Okay, you guys know Southeast Asia and the Pacific. He knew that one of my dream adventures of a lifetime is Tahiti or Bora Bora, right? So one day we happened to be traveling together on business, and we were in a hotel room, and Earl said to me, Lynnette, I can't, he was like, I can't even hold this. He was like, for your birthday, for your 40th, he said, I wanted it to be a surprise, but I'm not going to let it be a surprise. I want you to pick where you want to go, the hotel you want to spend the night at in Bora Bora. And I was like, what? What? Are you serious? And he said, absolutely. Yes, we're going to Bora Bora. Oh my God, I was so thrilled. I practically like jumped out of the bed like, ah! So Earl went off to sleep, and I stayed up on the laptop for like 2 hours. I was researching online. He had already told me, pick any hotel you want, preferably one with an overwater bungalow. Have you guys heard about these? Where you can see the fish below you and from your hotel floor is glass and all of this. He told me, go pick. He said, I already looked at a whole bunch of things. Go pick whichever hotel you want. So, and did I tell you that my man wanted to do it in style? Like first class tickets there and all of this stuff? Okay. So I'm looking online. I'm seeing all these hotel properties. I'm in hog heaven, right? But then I start doing the math. I start realizing first class tickets are going to be thousands and thousands of dollars for both of us. I look at the hotels, and literally all of the very nice hotels with the overwater bungalows, etc., were about $1,000 per night. Per night, okay? So after about 2.5 hours, I crawled back into bed with my husband, and I like snuggled up next to him, and I was like, honey, I was like, wake up. And he was very groggy, and he woke up, and I said, I got to talk to you about Bora Bora. And he said, oh, did you find the place? Where are we going? And I looked at him, I said, we ain't going to Bora Bora. And he was like, what? He got to woke up. He was like, huh? What? And I said, honey, I just looked online. Did you see how much those first class tickets are? Did you see the hotels are like $1,000 a night? And he said, yeah, I know yeah, definitely. They are expensive. And I said, honey, this trip is going to be a week trip. It's going to be at least 10 grand. And he was like, yeah, I know. And I said, I can't justify that. I was like, kids, we got kids saving for college. We got, I couldn't justify it. So at the end of the day, I know my husband, and I know that he's a person who doesn't believe in being frivolous with his money. And I know that I can tell him, yes, I want to go to Bora Bora, but today, this is how I feel. Nope, I'm not going to be willing to plunk down $10,000 in cash. And frankly, I wasn't going to put it on a credit card and be in debt for it. So you know what? We still haven't been on that Bora Bora trip. But it was something that actually endeared me more to my husband. He was grateful that I was thoughtful and considerate of his feelings and thinking ahead to would he have regrets later? Yes, he was all in and willing to do it, but I did something that I thought was actually prudent financially for us and that I wanted to be able to share at an emotional level with my husband. All right, so I'm going to wrap it up there. I hope this has really, really, really been helpful for you guys tonight. Stay with me here, and we're going to take some questions because I promised you guys that I would give you an opportunity to have some Q&A with me, right? So I said, I'm going to say whatever questions you guys have. And so I'm just going to go on the list here and tell you guys the answers to the questions that I have. Before I do that, though, since it is Monday the 25th, and I said I wanted to remind you, those of you who were going to watch me, because I appreciate that some of you tweeted me and put stuff on Facebook today about Good Morning America. Thank you so much. On Tuesday morning, it's round 2, Battle of the Super Savers. Team Lynnette, I want to hear my people out there. Yes, we had such a blast today. in the first round of this Super Saver segment we're doing on GMA. And yes, I'm going back again tomorrow. Believe it or not, this is my third hit of this month, 3 times in 1 month on Good Morning America. That's even a record for me, okay? So, but I do hope you'll watch, and it's going to be a lot of fun too. And you're going to learn some more money saving tips, okay? All right, so let's get into some of these questions and some of the things that people wanted to ask about. So I'm going to take some of you who asked about what if both of our families had trouble with finances when we were growing up? Oh, wow, that's a deep question. And frankly, it's not too uncommon. So if part of what you're discovering with your mate is that perhaps you both have bad financial habits because of what you learned, then it's time to sort of throw off the weight of the past, right? It's time to talk about how can we break the cycle of negativity that might have existed, either because our parents didn't know any better, they didn't have the resources to do better, or they just didn't have the tools. You know, a lot of us are a lot more educated in some ways, and I mean financial literacy or financial education. The fact that you've actually sat here for an hour and listened to this webinar and this session shows me that you have a interest and a desire to know more about how to manage money as a couple, which is a great thing. I thank you and I honor that. But also, even beyond that, you know, some of our parents, maybe they didn't go to school to learn about money matters. And frankly, a lot of us who went to school, you could have gotten an MBA and you might not have even learned about finances. I know that I have a master's degree. My husband has a degree as well. And neither one of us learned about personal finances or money management, not in school. And the lessons we learned from our parents, and for him as well, his grandparents who helped to raise him, were very different. So the first thing I would say is if you had trouble in your families, don't feel like you're destined to repeat the behaviors. In fact, make a vow with one another that you're going to break the cycle and recognize the negative financial behaviors for what they were. Don't judge people. Don't put them down. Don't demean them for any mistakes that they might have done. Just simply confirm that as a couple, we want to do better. We don't want to live a life of debt. We don't want to be in poverty. We don't want to have a lack of savings. We don't want to fail to plan for our kids. We don't want to be in a cycle of payday loans. Whatever the problems were that your parents might have experienced or that both of your families went through, just resolve to break the cycle. But first you have to be able to spot the behavior and to be willing to move away from any unhealthy behaviors that you might be actually engaging in that are reflective of what you learned in the past. Okay. Let's see. Somebody says, somebody was talking about that they have an MBA, they're married to a banker, and they still put more on the credit card than they should. I hear you on that. I mean, those of you who know my own personal story, you know that when I was in my early 30s, I had $100,000 in credit card debt alone. I know it sounds so awful to say, but it's the truth. And fortunately, I paid it all off in 3 years. I never missed a single payment. And I wrote this book about it called Zero Debt, The Ultimate Guide to Financial Freedom. And it became a New York Times bestseller. Who knew? But I know what it's like to be educated, to have an educated spouse. And this was when I was deep in debt, I should mention. This was actually with my ex-husband who had a PhD. He was an Ivy League grad. But I had still a lot of debt, and it was because of mistakes that we were both making, financially imprudent decisions, and not, frankly, working together as a team. One of the lessons that I've learned in my second marriage now with Earl, and I'm very happy, 2017, next year will be our 10-year anniversary. But one of the things that we've been so fortunate and so blessed in our marriage is that we have an incredible amount of intimacy and communication. Earl often says to me, and I take it as like the highest compliment, that he doesn't know anybody, any couple any siblings, any mama, daddy, anybody who talks more than we talk. And he says he loves it. And I love it. And it's so great for our marriage. It's so healthy, but it helps to keep us on the same page. And I'm telling you, the art of communication at the end of the day, that's how you're able to have compassion for your spouse. That's how you're able to say, let's be mature in approaching some things, even if they're tough topics. The compassion, the understanding, the maturity, those are the non-financial things that'll help you to have financial harmony in your relationship, believe it or not. Okay. Let's talk about some of these other things here. And I want to make sure that I have any other questions up here. I don't want to miss anybody here. Someone before had asked about, should the finances be handled by both spouses, or should only one spouse handle the money? Great question. I'll tell you, it's not actually an uncommon question. A lot of people want to know, like, who should handle the money? Because sometimes people get tripped up and have arguments over it, mainly because at the end of the day, from a practical standpoint, to actually execute and do things, it's usually more seamless, easier, and I dare even say advisable to have one person to actually do things, quote unquote, and handle the money in a relationship. So why do I say that it's actually more advisable and recommended that one person? It's literally for speed of execution, for consistency and tracking and methodology. So in my relationship, for example, some of you probably be surprised to hear this, I don't execute on the day-to-day transactions and the monthly transactions. My husband handles it. He sets up the online bill pays. He makes sure all the bills get paid on time. And again, I told you, next year will be 10 years of marriage. Neither one of us have missed a payment in, we met in 2003. I haven't missed a payment in 20 something years. Earl hasn't missed a payment probably in about the same, maybe 15 plus years or maybe 20 years. But certainly in our marriage, nothing ever, we're never late. And that's why we both have great credit. So, but from a practical standpoint, I know my husband is very organized. I know he loves to use spreadsheets. I know that he will make sure, because he's disciplined. In fact, he has a part of our family motto is something that he calls DOS, discipline, organization, and structure. Okay, that tells you the kind of man I'm dealing with, right? He's no joke. He stays on it. And everybody knows, who sees him as my better half, which is truly what he is. People who know the two of us working together, they're always like, Earl is on it, So long story short, in our relationship, Earl actually handles all the transactions. Now, let me give you guys who are listening a caveat. I'm not saying financially check out. I'm not saying it's okay to financially abdicate responsibilities. No, it's absolutely not. You should always know what's going on in your relationship, personally, financially, professionally, and otherwise. You should be able to take the temperature of your relationship and understand where you are from an emotional health point of view. Likewise, you should be very much in tune with what's going on with the money. I told you guys, for example, how we get alerts if there's deposits or withdrawals made out of our accounts. I get the alerts and he gets the alerts. We get alerts when certain charges are made on different cards, etc. I get the alerts and he gets the alerts. So from a practical standpoint, one person should probably go ahead and handle the day-to-day, whatever is necessary, or usually it's sort of week-to-week or month-to-month transactions, just to be able to keep the records, to put together a system that you guys agree upon. Some people like spreadsheets. Some people like pen and paper. Some people want automatic deductions and payments. Again, that's part of the discussion and deciding things, right? But ultimately, I think it's usually more practical and advantageous to have one person to actually handle it. Just don't let the other party check out, because both of you need to be aware of what's going on in your financial relationship. Okay. Let's go to some other questions here. Okay. Somebody else was asking about, I'm not sure if you were saying on the fourth thing, throw it away, when I was talking about the fourth the 4 items as it pertains to the pros and cons of separate accounts and joint accounts. I'll take you guys back to a slide or two, and I think this is the one that might have been referenced about the pros. I'm not 100% sure if that's what this question was referencing, about 4 items here. I talked about the pros of joint accounts being transparency and more communication and, promoting general feelings of trust and a focus, a more of a shared, like we're in this together, team building kind of thing. And I'm not sure if this is what the question was referencing about the 4th thing about throwing it away. Because some things, maybe you're thinking like, if you have a joint account, you're not going to be so easily to want to break up or to throw the marriage away or to break up an account and throw that away. I'm not 100% sure. However, I can tell you that, yes, I think people do think long and hard about when they are considering a split of any kind or separating, that they know that there's another party involved and that there's, more at stake. And it's a little more serious. It's a heightened level of financial responsibility and accountability when you have to consider not just yourself, but what's healthy and good and proper for your mate as well. And I think that's good. It promotes selflessness in all of us. And I think those of us who are trying to be better people in general, you don't want to be selfish, especially in a marriage. You want to be loving and giving to your partner, and helping to help them to have what they need in the relationship as well. Okay. Let me take 1 or 2 more questions and then I will wrap it up here. Someone asked about what should the first steps be? Reduce interest rates or pay off larger credit cards? Oh, great question. I did a 4-week webinar series called Get Out of Debt and Get Financially Fit Now. And it was all about how to pay off your credit card debts and other obligations as well. And I talked about the way in which you could choose, but essentially it was about attacking the area of pain that is worse for you. So some people really are not bothered by high interest rates. In fact, we've been in a very low interest rate environment, and maybe they have credit cards that are about 11%, 12%. Maybe some people have as high as 16%. Certainly, if you have credit cards that are with default or so-called penalty interest rates, then you probably have cards that have 20 plus percentage points in terms of the interest rate, 21%, 24%. I would imagine, that's probably really bothering you. But if you have the average credit card interest rate, it very well may be that it's not the interest rate. It could be that you're stressed out because you're maxed out. And if that's the case, I would encourage you to pay off those cards with the largest dollar balances first. And indeed, for a lot of individuals and a lot of couples in general, I think that this is actually the better strategy. Some of you might say this sounds like financial heresy, because I know so much of what you've heard so many times, year after year, pay off your high interest rate debt first, right? You've heard this time and time again. Well, I'm here to tell you that the pay off your high interest rate debt strategy doesn't always work. And it doesn't work for most people for a reason. You know what the reason is? People give up. They don't see any progress. They don't see that their balances have budged at all and they haven't changed. And it's kind of like, as I explained in my Get Out of Debt and Get Financially Fit Now webinar series, it's kind of like the person who says, I want to lose weight, and they step on a scale. They know what their current weight is, and they say, okay, I'm going to hit it hard. I'm going to go to the gym for 30 days straight to kick things off. And I'm going to eat very clean. I'm going to stay away from the cookies and the desserts and the cakes and the ice cream and the chips. I'm going to exercise every day. And they do it. They actually stick to the plan. But then a month later, they step on the scale, and guess what? Their weight hasn't budged. They're like, what? I'm the exact same weight. And what happens? They get disheartened. They feel like giving up. They're like, I put in all this effort, all this work, and the scale didn't even budge. I'm pretty much the exact same weight. It's so disheartening. It's such a profound sense of failure almost. You feel like, what do I have to do? That's the same thing that a lot of people feel when they pay off their high interest rate credit cards first. I'm not saying that statistically or mathematically that paying off those debts won't mean that you'll shell out the least amount of money, and that financially speaking on paper that might make sense. Yes, it actually does make the most sense in pure numbers terms. But we're human beings here. We're not just numbers on a paper. We are all real, unique individuals with feelings, thoughts, actions, behaviors, some of which are rational, some of which are irrational. But at the end of the day, we're all human beings. And so if you work so hard, you slaved away, you earned all this money, you put it on a credit card payment, and the next month you see, what? My balance barely budged. That's disheartening for a lot of people. And that is the reason that a lot of people find it hard to stick to a sustained, long-term debt payoff plan where the strategy is to pay off the high interest rate debt first. Usually, those who pay off the high dollar balances first, or even those who pay off low dollar balances first, where they've just knocked out a credit card entirely. Maybe the card only had $200 on it and they knocked that card off. Usually those people get better results because they stick with their debt payoff plan. Those individuals see the results very quickly. They get motivated and they keep powering ahead. They keep snowballing it. They keep the snowball effect going because they'll pay off one debt or pay a chunk of debt down, and they see, I have some breathing room on this credit card now. I'm not all maxed out. I'm not at my credit limits. And then once they pay off one card, they use the cash that they had been paying on that card and pay it towards another card. So frankly, I like the option of paying off those high dollar balances first, or even the low dollar balance cards if you have multiple cards that each have small balances on them. Okay. Hope that helps you on that for you individually and as a couple. Okay. I think it's 8:20 something. I went, an extra 20 minutes, whatever, but I said I would do questions. So we're at 8:23. So I'm going to wrap it up here. And I'm so very happy that all of you took the time to stay with me, to listen to this. I want to say a special thanks again to the folks at DFLI Money School for sponsoring this session, for making it possible for all of you to listen in at no charge, again, because this is compliments of the Money School. Those of you who know DFLI, you can go to the website, dfli.org. Tremendous amount of financial education resources, classes that you can take. And this is part of a 5-part series about relationships and money. This is the very first one that we've kicked off. We're going to do another one in February, March, April, May. Who knows? I don't know. You guys might start clamoring for more. We may take this all year long. But for now, at least, we're committed. We're going to do 5 of these together. And I hope you'll continue to join me. Again, this has been Lynnette Khalfani-Cox. I'm the co-founder of AskTheMoneyCoach.com. Thank you so much for watching.